Hello everybody and welcome. I am really excited for this video today because I am currently celebrating my 10th year sewing anniversary. I have been looking over some of my very first projects and I thought it would be interesting to share some of them from my very first year of sewing here with you, not only because I am a very nostalgic person by nature, but also because I thought that by sharing these projects and the many trials and tribulations that I experienced while making them, I could perhaps reassure and maybe even encourage some of you to try sewing for the first time. If you are watching and you haven't tried sewing yet and you've always wanted to, and you're feeling overwhelmed by the vast amount of decision making it takes to get into the first project, or if you're facing down new techniques that scare you or tackling a very big project that you've wanted to but have been avoiding for a long time, I hope that this will help you gain confidence in your sewing practice, or that you'll just laugh along with me for about half an hour. And then stay tuned to the end of the video because I have organized a big giveaway, and my main goals with this giveaway is to not only celebrate the community that has gathered around this channel and the various sewing experiences that we all have within us, but also share this love of sewing with perhaps people outside of this community. So stay tuned for more details about that. If by chance you are new here, I thought I'd introduce myself really quickly. My name is Sarah. I am originally from the northeast of the United States, but I moved to France about 15 years ago, and this is where I've made my life. I mostly talk about sewing on this channel, but also a little bit of knitting and embroidery from time to time, as well as what it's like living in France, because that definitely influences my creativity and what I want to make and wear on a day-to-day basis. And welcome. So I have 10 projects to share with you today, but I thought I would give you a little bit of context as to what my life was like in February 2016, 10 years ago, when I decided to buy my first sewing machine and try making my very first garment. So I had just graduated from my master's program at one of the branches of the University of Paris in book marketing the summer before, and I had just found a full-time permanent contract a few months before, and I had just moved into a little 33 square metered Parisian apartment with my boyfriend, who is now my husband. Finding that job changed everything, and I was incredibly lucky to find it because it is very difficult in publishing to find a full-time and permanent or an indeterminate period contract, as we say in France, versus a determined period. And before that, I had either worked as an English teacher for very specific periods of time, so 7 to 10 months, or I was a student, which is a 12-month basis. And that meant that I had to renew my visa every time one of those contracts or school years ended. And this meant that I not only could get a visa that was for a longer period of time, I think 2 to 3 years at a time, but also I'd be able to renew it as long as I stayed at this job, which meant that I not only had now financial security with a stable income and housing security with this apartment with my boyfriend, but also I could start to build a life in France after 5 years of being temporary and always worried about what am I going to do at the end of my next visa to be able to stay. And I was finally able to invest in furnishing my home and not keeping my belongings to whatever I could fit in a suitcase if ever I had to leave, and purchasing a sewing machine. I did have some experience with me when I first started sewing garments, but this was my very first time sewing garments for an adult human body because my first experience was with my grandmother. I was visiting her and I was about 8 or 9 years old and showing her my favorite Beanie Baby, the lamb, and she asked me, would you like to make a dress for your Beanie Baby? And I said, sure. And so she brought down her sewing basket from the attic and she let me pick through her scrap fabrics, and I picked one. I can't remember the color of it, but I do know now that it was a Liberty fabric. And she showed me how to make a very simple dress. So it was a rectangle of fabric folded in half with a half circle cut out for the neckline, and then almost like a kimono shape, except with an A-line skirt cut out and then sewed up with a straight stitch that she showed me how to do. And then when I finished, she let me pick out a piece of ribbon to belt around the waist to create a waisted silhouette. And oh, I was enchanted, and this passion for sewing was awoken in me, and I spent the next few years begging my mother to take me to Joann's Fabrics so that I could rifle through the remnant fabrics and pick them out, because I would pet sit the neighborhood cats and dogs when my neighbors would go away on vacation, and I would pick out ribbons and thread and needles, and it was such an exciting time for me. But then when middle school started, I sort of put it aside because there were too many things to do, the workload was really hard, and there were other extracurricular activities that I wanted to try out because sewing wasn't really an activity that was proposed by the school or the town. And so I was doing softball, choir, orchestra, and I was very, very busy. But I did keep cross-stitching. I had started cross-stitching at about age 7 with little kits, and I kept doing that throughout, kind of not really until the end of high school when I was in university, but I would use it in university as a way to de-stress whenever I could. And because I was also kind of lonely, especially in my first year. But I had to put this desire to sew aside, especially when I first came to France at age 21 for my senior year of university and then was trying to stay. I did not have the budget to invest in this hobby. And so once I did, I went for it. And the main reason I wanted to sew, well, there were multiple reasons. The main reasons I wanted to sew for myself is that I wanted to have clothes that fit me correctly and not feel pressured to make my body fit the clothes that I wanted to wear. And then also I wanted to be able to wear the colors and silhouettes that I wanted and to have control of that. And then also fibers. And the well-constructed clothes that were made of the fibers that I wanted to wear, such as wool for warmth in the wintertime or linen in the summertime, were very expensive and outside of my budget. And so I dreamed of just making it myself. So in February 2016, I was well established in my job and in the apartment with my boyfriend, and I decided to invest in a sewing machine. And my first machine was the Janome Green 19 New Edition. It is no longer a model that is for sale, but it is one of their basic models for beginner sewists. It had all of the basic functions, a straight stitch, a zigzag stitch, and it would work up to about jean weight fabric, although I did make a boiled wool coat with that one as well, and I don't remember it being an issue, so it was a pretty good machine. I still have it just in case my current machine, my love, breaks down or needs some maintenance that I could use it. But I highly recommend Janome. I've always sewn on Janome machines, so I don't really have a comparison point, but I'm very happy with the two machines that I have. And after much research and looking at different patterns and figuring out what kind of fabric I wanted to work with, I picked out my first project and started. My very first project was a top that I wanted to make, and I decided to make the Seamwork Sorbetto top, which is a free pattern and still is. I'll link it below if you'd like to check it out. And it is a sleeveless top with a crew neck and a center front pleat. I decided to make this with a Swiss dot cotton in a kind of off-white pinkish color from Pretty Mercery, which is an online French fabric shop. And I was already with this project very, very ambitious. Some people start with accessories like napkins or tote bags, and I went straight for a top. I wanted to make garments right away and get into it, and I wanted to start modifying them myself as well. And so not only did I make my own bias binding out of the same fabric for the neckline and armhole finishings, I remember with this project, the needle kept snagging on the fabric, and it was very difficult at first. And I think that the Swiss dot detail of the fabric made it sort of difficult to work with because it wasn't sliding together very easily. And yeah, I just remember this being a bit frustrating. I realize now that cotton voile that's 100% cotton doesn't have very much give to it. And I think that something with a little bit more give maybe would have been easier to sew with first. But it was magical seeing this top come together, especially once I added the gathers and attached these shoulders and side seams. I saw that, this flat piece of fabric, it was becoming this 3D garment, and I was so proud. Unfortunately, I didn't think of transparency when I was making this top, so I ended up wearing it as a sleeping top, something to sleep in the summertime, and I wore it like that for a year or two. But the arm size were very tight, so it wasn't very comfortable, and I didn't end up keeping that one. But I'm so proud of that very first project, and I'm glad that I tried it. My second project ever was the Seamwork Mesa dress, because I had learned so much from the Seamwork website and from the free articles that they posted about how to sew, how to tackle certain techniques, that I decided to subscribe to their magazine because Seamwork used to be an online monthly magazine. And I remember seeing the Mesa dress, which is a knit shift dress, and thinking, how sophisticated. I would love to wear that. And so I tried making it in a stretch cotton in a navy blue color from, I think, the Marché de Saint-Pierre. And this did not go well. I discovered that I do not like working with jersey fabrics, and that is something that I maintain to today, and that not all cotton jerseys are made equal. This one was way too thin for what I wanted. It was very clingy, and I discovered that shift dresses are not for me because my top half is 2 sizes smaller than my bottom half, and I didn't understand silhouette very well at the time, and I thought, how come it's not hanging so nicely on me? How come it's getting sort of bunched up at my hips and looking really loose at my waist? And it's just my morphology, that's how shift dresses look on me. Ugh, I was so disappointed. It was also, this fabric was so thin and clingy that it was pretty much transparent as well, like it showed everything. And I discovered that I do not like wearing a tube of cotton jersey at all. And so even though this was a fail, it was a big step in learning what kind of jersey fabrics I want to work with going forward. The next project I have. This is a bag that I made. It is a round-based sort of cylindrical bag made out of 2 different cottons. This flowery cotton and then also this striped cotton. I did not do much pattern matching, unfortunately, at the time. And the straps are starting to come off, so I need to do some repair work there. But I use it to hold my projects, and currently I have, not now, but I currently keep, when I'm not filming, the notions and materials for the Grace coat pattern that I would very, very much like to work on soon, because I did gather everything that I would need for it. But yeah, this is an interesting project. I found this pattern for free online, and I tried finding it again because I didn't save it to my computer. And I could not find it, so I'm very, very sorry. But there are a lot of free bag patterns online if you search, including the Helen's Closet tote bag. I can't remember the name of the tote bag, but it looks really, really well done, especially if you want to play with different fabrics and color block for the first time. So I will link that below as well if you'd like to check that out. I definitely used interfacing for the first time with this one, so I can feel the interfacing is very papery and has absolutely bubbled and come detached in places. And I'm not sure what I used for the bottom, but it feels pretty stable, which is kind of cool. I didn't know I knew how to do that. I haven't done it since. But the straps are in this very, very light cotton, and I think that they're not sturdy enough, or this fabric isn't sturdy enough for the very heavy fabrics and things that I keep in here. But yeah, it's interesting to see this bag project that I made, especially it is the first and only time that I have sewn rickrack. I didn't even know how I put it on there, but I checked it out earlier and I think it's zigzag stitch, but it's pretty well attached, so yay for me. And so because it's still useful for me for holding projects in the attic, but still very useful, I think I will be repairing that, perhaps reinforcing it, so that it will live on. My next project that I was really excited to get into was a skirt, and this is something that I had always wanted to make myself because I started wearing skirts and dresses a few years beforehand and loved wearing them, and I had a really hard time finding skirts that would fit me because my waist is proportionate to my bust size, but it is therefore about 2 sizes or more smaller than my hips, depending on the pattern sizing, for example. So I'd have to buy skirts that would correspond to my hip measurements, otherwise I couldn't get into it, but then they would be very gapey at the waist. And so this is something I was really excited to get into. And I chose the Pixa skirt by Couture, who is a French pattern maker, and her patterns are not available in English, but I highly recommend checking them out if you don't mind translating the document yourself, if you'd like to use this pattern. I especially love her Minorque top, and I will definitely be making more of those in the future. But this one, it didn't turn out very well. So firstly, I made it in a Japanese print cotton lawn from Mondial Tissu, which is a nationwide fabric shop here in France. And I decided to add a lining myself because that wasn't a part of the pattern instructions, with a pink viscose that I found at Toto. And this pattern featured princess seams in the front and optional piping in that seam, and then also an invisible zip in the back and darts in the back. So it was the very first time I was sewing any of these things, like a princess seam, piping, an invisible zip, and darts, which was exciting. And this one was a lot more fun to sew. I discovered that I loved sewing and working with viscose because it's so soft and lovely and it has a bit of give to it. And then also this cotton was a bit thicker than the cotton voile that I worked with first and easier to sew. But cotton lawn for this project wasn't a good match after all. I did wear it a few times, but I felt like it was very fragile and about to rip or break if I sat on something sharp or got stuck on something. It definitely didn't feel like it had enough structure and heft to be a skirt, especially a paneled skirt. And the piping sort of pulled at those seams. It just didn't look very good, and it felt like I wasn't really wearing anything. It felt very homemade in the sense that it was like quilting cotton made into a garment, and it just didn't really match the pattern at all. And so I didn't really wear it very much. And then also I know now why I didn't really like the fit of it. Is that it didn't have a waistband, and I discovered later on, or I learned throughout sewing in these 10 years, that I prefer patterns with waistbands, and that goes for pants as well, because I feel like it's more securely at the waist and it's not going to move around as much, and it also creates a visual line at the waist, or a visual sort of break. I ended up not wearing this one very much, mostly because of the fabric weight, and I think I gave it away or recycled it after a year or two. But I was overall satisfied with that first skirt and not at all undeterred. The next project that I worked on was a dress, and I was really excited about this one. I decided to make the Seamwork Hazel dress, which featured really interesting lines in the bodice. So instead of princess seams, you have diagonal seams, creating sort of a triangle in the front, and then wide straps and a dirndl-shaped gathered skirt with inseam pockets. And so it was my very first time sewing a woven dress with a gathered skirt and inseam pockets and shoulder straps, and so I was really excited. I decided to make it in a navy blue and white polka dotted cotton lawn from Marché de Saint-Pierre again, and this is sort of a theme in the first year and in all of the years of my sewing journey, is trying to wear blue, especially navy blue, and not understanding why it doesn't work with my coloring. And I am learning that navy blues can be more or less warm, and this ended up being, just like my Seamwork Mesa dress, that knit jersey dress, a warmer navy blue. And not that I made that color mistake recently at all. I remember enjoying making this dress. I don't remember there being any problems. I think that it went really well, actually, and that I didn't have a whole lot of problem solving to do with it. And I was really happy to put this on and have it finished, but something about it just didn't work for me, and I don't think I wore it out more than once. I think that the high-waisted style already wasn't really my thing, which is also not a mistake that I made recently at all. I also think that the gathered dirndl-styled skirt wasn't great because with the high waist and the gathering, my hips are larger than my top half, so it makes them even larger looking. So it sort of emphasizes how small my top half is and how much bigger my bottom half is. I think it looks a little bit better on figures with a bit more volume on top, for example, a bit curvier on top, because it creates sort of a hip flare, and I didn't need an additional hip flare myself. And so yeah, I didn't really enjoy wearing it, and I think it was a little bit too girly for me. And I was figuring out what kinds of styles and silhouettes I wanted to wear, and I think that that one really helped me realize that I wanted something a bit less feminine and girly and sweet on me. And I started exploring other styles. So even if I didn't wear it very much, I think that I donated this one away because it was still well made, and I think it would suit someone else very, very well. Yeah, it helped me figure out my style. The next project that I made was a very ambitious one because it was with viscose, and it is the Seamwork Almada robe that was a part of their magazine as well, or one of the patterns, one of their first patterns, I think. And I absolutely wanted to try it because I really loved these sleeves and then the drapey nature of the robe, and I thought it just looked really lovely and elegant. And once again, I sort of mismatched weights. And so this is a very, very light and floaty viscose from Pretty Mercery, and it was part of my very first fabric purchase, so already very ambitious. And I made a few mistakes. So for example, the interfacing that I used in the sleeves is much too rigid and papery for this fabric. It is much more appropriate for a collar, for example, a cotton collar on a shirt, than a viscose fabric. And the same goes for inside the waist ties. I also picked out this bias binding in this polyester satin that I purchased to finish the edges. And I don't think that that was the best decision because the bias binding is so much heavier than my viscose fabric. It sort of pulls and hangs very heavily in the front when I wear it, and so it doesn't feel that great. I think that this silhouette doesn't really work for me. I think it is, yeah, a little bit too strange in shape. So for example, your elbow is here, so it sort of follows your arm all the way down the elbow here, but then your arm is sort of attached here. So if you're reaching and doing things, it's not very convenient. And then these, especially because I reinforce them so tightly or so structurally, get caught on everything. Doorknobs, anything that would be sticking out, it gets caught on and pulls. And this fabric is so very delicate. It's an especially delicate viscose. It rips very easily, and it's starting to come apart at some of the seams. For example, the shoulder seams here, I can see it's coming apart a little bit. I just made a few mistakes with this one. I think also when I dried it, I didn't dry it flat, or I didn't dry it with attention to how it was hanging, because some of the parts of the viscose seem stretched out a little bit versus other parts. And so yeah, this was a big fail, but as you can see, I couldn't get rid of it. I wouldn't donate it or sell it because I don't think that it is good quality, but I've kept it because I think that I'm still a little bit in love with this fabric. It reminds me very much of porcelain designs. I think that I will cut it apart and recycle pieces of this fabric, maybe to make bias binding, maybe to make a smaller top. But yeah, it's still silky soft fabric, and I am very happy that I tried sewing with viscose again, because I did sew viscose for the lining of the Pixa skirt, but it sort of confirmed my passion for working with very soft, luxuriously drapey fabrics. My next project was my very first birthday dress. And this isn't quite a yearly tradition because I don't always make myself a dress for my birthday, but I do think about it every year. And I have done it most years since I started sewing. And this one was interesting. It was the Kwik K4111 dress, and I decided to make the crew neck top with the petal skirt, and I made it out of a viscose from Benitex, which is a fabric warehouse based in the northeastern suburbs of Paris. And I remember it was very on trend to have origami birds on your fabric, and I was fully participating in that trend. And I encountered difficulties with this one right away because I realized after receiving the fabric, because I bought it online, that it was transparent, and so I had to line it completely with a viscose, so working with two viscose fabrics together, and I think I interlined it because I remember it being really shifty and hard to keep the two pieces together. I think that the final garment came out pretty well. I wore it to my birthday party that I threw for myself at home, and I remember being very proud of it, and then wearing it also to work throughout the summer after, because it was light and airy and easy to stay cool in, and I would usually wear it belted because it just had a seam attaching the bodice and the skirt, but nothing really to define the waist, and so I would belt it and wear it like that. The only difficulty, I remember it was very difficult to sit in because the petals would open and fall open with abandon every time I sat down, so I had to be very careful about sitting. But I remember not really wanting to wear this dress after about a season or two. I think it was that it felt really light and flimsy, just like my Pixa skirt. It didn't feel fully realized. How do you explain that? I'm having a hard time. It felt, once again, like the weight was mismatched, or it wasn't the right fabric. I think that this fabric maybe would have been better in a drapey blouse, but not in a skirt. And so I think it also reinforced for me this idea that if I want to make a skirt out of a viscose, it has to be a heavier weight with a bottom weight, or a twill that would hang nicely. Like my O's Patterns Kia skirt, that is a viscose, but it is a much heavier weight and thicker viscose that doesn't feel so fragile when I sit in it. It doesn't feel like it's gonna rip if I get caught on something. And so yeah, I'm very proud of this very first birthday dress. And I remember working with this really buttery soft viscose was just a pleasure. So I'm happy that I did that all the same. The next sewing project that I made was actually a gift for a friend. So I wanted to make a gift for a friend who was leaving France after living there for 5 years. We had been roommates for a year when I lived in Lille at one time, and I love her so much. She's now in Los Angeles, and I was able to meet her baby boy very recently. I remember it being very bittersweet because obviously it was sad for me to see her go, and then I think that the decision for her to leave France and go back to the US was also bittersweet for her. And so I wanted to make her something. And when she came to visit, we picked out a polyester crepe fabric together from Tissuren, which was my first time buying fabric at Tissuren, and my first time working with a crepe fabric, which was interesting. And she decided on the Seamwork Aster blouse, which, looking at now as I was preparing this video, I really want to make again because I find the shape really lovely. But anyway, we made the version with the flutter sleeves and the V-neck with the buttons going all the way down, and we picked out the buttons together. And I remember at that time I had also leveled up my sewing space, and I bought that ubiquitous IKEA table with the two folding leaves that I would cut my projects out on, and it was so much nicer than cutting out on the floor, especially because my Parisian wooden floor was not level. It was all over the place. I don't remember there being huge problems with working with crepe. I was very, very careful. I tried making sure that it didn't shift too much, and it was a very blousy top, and so it didn't require extreme precision. But I do remember being very, very scared when I had to make those buttonholes at the very end and feeling relieved when it went okay with my machine. I was able to deliver it to her a few days before she left, and she wears it to this day, which is so lovely. I'm so happy that it fits and that she's comfortable in it and that it's still a piece that she enjoys 10 years later. My next project, going back to my love already for viscose fabrics, was the Sew Over It silk cami, and this was the beginning of my Sew Over It journey as well. I've made a lot of their pieces ever since, and I still have it with me today. So I made it in a white viscose from Toto, and because it was transparent, I fully underlined it with another layer of the same fabric, and then sewed the hems together in a tiny rolled hem, if you can see that there. And gosh, this was a challenge, not only because their smallest size is one size too big for my top half, so for my bust and waist measurements, and I didn't realize, or I didn't know how to modify the pattern manually down one size yet. And sewing these two fabrics together was very, very tricky. I did French seams on both of them and then put them on the inside of the garment, so you can see them if I hold them up, I think. Maybe with the light reflecting through. I pressed them to either side, and yeah, I wear it to this day, even though after 10 years, some of the seams are starting to come apart and fray. But I love it. Unfortunately, when I first put it on, the neckline was too gapey because it was too big on me, the smallest size. They have a size 6 now, but I don't think that they've updated all of their patterns, but at least now there's a size that fits me. So what I did was I just created a pleat in the strap here, which is unfortunate because the strap usually has a much cleaner finish, but that sort of brought in the neckline for me, and now I can wear it. It does gape a little bit, but I still wear it on a regular basis, and it's still alive, even though it's starting to fray at the front seam a little bit. And I made it a few more times, although this is the one that I wear absolutely the most often and that I love. And so yeah, this was probably one of my first successful sewing projects, apart from my friend's blouse, was this Sew Over It silk cami. The last project that I wanted to share with you today is very, very dear to me, and it is the Sew Over It Erin skirt from their City Break ebook. And I wear this to this day. It is just such a lovely pencil skirt, and pencil skirts was something that I really, really wanted to explore when I was starting to sew, because my sister says that my style is sexy librarian, and I cannot counter that. I think I agree with her entirely. And so I really wanted to try wearing a pencil skirt, but I could never buy it before because my waist was smaller than my hips, and so nothing would work with my body. And so this was my first grading project, where I graded from a smaller size at the waist to a larger size at the hips, which was so exciting. And also sewing slash pockets and sewing with jean fabric. This is a dark wash. I think it was advertised as black, but I think it's just a very, very dark navy. And I got it from Mondial Tissu as well. And I decided to top stitch with gray thread. And it's not entirely even everywhere, but I'm so proud of it. and I chose these brown, orangey brown buttons for more of a vintage effect. Since making this skirt, I do wear it a lot. I don't wear it as much now, but it has gotten a lot of wear over the years. You can kind of tell it's gotten really, really soft and aged in places like along the waistband. It's got little age marks, and I just love that. It shows that this denim skirt has been loved and worn and fits me. It still fits, which is great, even if it's not elastic. This is a non-elastic jean fabric, and it's unlined as well. I usually wear it with a half slip underneath, but I don't really wear it anymore, and I think it's not only because I prefer below the knee skirts now, and this is an above the knee skirt. I think that I'm not really into the buttons being this vintage style and contrasting anymore. It's a very warm brown, and I think I would prefer something cooler and more subtle. And especially I notice now this one's sewn on upside down or backwards versus these. You can sew it on this way too, but they should probably all be the same, right? And also I've learned since that I prefer to have the button thread matching the button and not the fabric underneath for a less contrasting thing. And then this project is extra special to me as well because it is the very first sewing project that I shared on Instagram, which started this endeavor of sharing my makes on social media and sharing what I learned and the combinations of patterns and fabrics that I would put together, because that's how I learned. I learned by following people on Instagram and seeing what they made, what kind of fabric, what colors, and then also YouTubers. And so it was my way of giving back, and so is this video, and all of the videos that I make is to give back to the sewing community, hopefully, as well. So that brings me to the giveaway that I have organized for this video. In celebration of my 10-year sewing anniversary, I wanted to organize something to give back to the sewing community and welcome new members into the sewing community and help aspiring sewists to take the plunge. The prizes I have prepared are more for beginner sewists, and I know that a lot of you watching are more experienced sewists, and a lot of you are actually even more experienced than I am, which is so cool that you're here and that you find this channel interesting. But I wanted to make sure that in that case, you can still win and participate if you want to, but I wanted to make sure that you could transfer this prize to someone who wants to learn how to sew, or such as family or friend or colleague who's always talked about wanting to get into sewing but doesn't know where to start, so that you can transfer this gift to them and bring them into the sewing community if they'd be interested and if you would be as well. As you may have noticed, Seamwork played a very big role in the way I learned to sew. I was really encouraged to start sewing by looking at their articles on their website and seeing the details of how to pick your fabric and the techniques to try for a first project. It was a big helping hand for me to get into sewing and feel the confidence to try it out for myself. And so for me, it's a full circle moment to be able to center this giveaway around Seamwork. And this video is not sponsored, for full disclosure, but I am a Seamwork affiliate, so if you make a purchase with any of the links that I've included below, I do earn a commission. Seamwork has decided to donate something to this giveaway, which is really cool. But yeah, this isn't sponsored. It's just because this is, for me, the best way to get into sewing and how I got into sewing. So there will be 8 prizes total, and the first 5 winners will win the Seamwork Dress Pants pattern. I love these pants, and I made it 3 times in 2025. It was a revelation for me, and it is a great beginner project. It features a high-waisted fit with an elasticated waistband, optional patch pockets, and a wide-legged fit. And so it is easy to fit because it is not a very fitted garment, and the elasticated waistband makes it very, very comfortable. The techniques are pretty beginner as well, such as applying patch pockets, hemming, sewing side seams, and then inserting an elastic in the waistband. It is really, really versatile as well. You can make it in all different kinds of fabrics. I made it in stiffer wools, for example, for winter, but also in a linen for summer, and I love all 3 of them. But you can also make them in cotton, in viscose, even in silk. The size range for this pattern is a size 0 to 26, so a hip measurement of 35 inches to 58 inches. I loved making this pattern, and I love wearing it as well. I'm wearing one right now, and so I hope that those of you who win will enjoy this one as well. The 6th and 7th winners of this giveaway will win an unlimited Seamwork annual membership. I have purchased one to give away, and Seamwork has very generously donated one as well. With the unlimited membership, you get access to all of their patterns including over 250 of them from their catalog, as well as to their member-exclusive bonus pattern variations, such as the fitted sleeves on the Seamwork Callan sweater that I made recently and absolutely love. You also get free access to their video technique classes and their Design Your Wardrobe program, which takes place I think twice a year. Also access to their members-only online sewing community and fabric discounts to fabric shops all over the world. And then the grand prize for the 8th winner is access to the Learn to Sew online video course by Seamwork. And this is a 12 video long pre-recorded course that will walk you through how to use a sewing machine, how to understand a pattern, how to understand fabric, and then it will walk you through step by step how to make a simple dress and a simple jacket. To participate, respond to one of these questions, either what was your very first sewing project and how did it go, or what is the one project that you dream of making yourself. This giveaway is open internationally and to viewers 18 years or older for legal simplicity, and will be closing March 14th midnight Central European Time. After this date, I will add a pinned comment to the comment section underneath this video announcing the winners, and I will contact each of you below your comment as a reply to your comment telling you that you have won and giving you instructions as to how to get in touch with me via email to claim your prize. Just know that these sorts of giveaways can attract scammers, and so I will never contact you via WhatsApp or ask for money or payment in any way, so just be careful with that. I will always contact you with my official YouTube channel identity, and we will communicate via email with my official email address linked to this YouTube channel. I am so excited for this giveaway and to see your responses, so don't hesitate to participate either for yourself or on behalf of someone else. And thank you to Seamwork for the generous donation of an annual membership for this giveaway. I hope that hearing my intrepid beginner sewing stories helped you to either gain confidence in trying yourself or reassurance in that you're not the only one who's struggled or had trials and tribulations in your projects, or just made you laugh. I have linked all of the patterns I've talked about in the description below, so don't hesitate to check that out. And then if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And then if you'd like to leave a tip, you have the YouTube super thanks option, or I have linked my Ko-fi account below if you prefer, and all contributions are welcome. Thank you so much. I hope you are all doing well and that you enjoyed this video. I will be back very soon with a new one. Take care and bye-bye.